prosecution and defense have rested their case in Donald Trump's New York hush money trial, the former president's first criminal trial. USA Today's Aisha Bagchi explains the case's key takeaways from the courthouse. Here's what we know now.
What were the key arguments in the prosecution's case?
The prosecution has argued that Donald Trump falsified business records, so they put on a lot of evidence to try to show both sides of the case, that this hush money payment was made, that Trump authorized it, and that Trump participated in a scheme on the back end to cover up reimbursement payments he was making to his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for the hush money payment that Michael Cohen sent just ahead of the 2016 election.
Did the prosecution present a strong case?
Whether the prosecution presented a strong case is ultimately up to the jury. They are relying pretty heavily on Michael Cohen for some important parts. So they introduced even Donald Trump's own words. They had book publishers come in and read from his books, things that he said in them, like, I look at all my invoices, I sign all my checks because I want to know where my money is going. I care about every penny. These sorts of things that they hoped would support the testimony that they ultimately got from Michael Cohen.
Did Stormy Daniels' testimony help or hurt the prosecution?
It'll really be up to the jury to decide whether they found Stormy Daniels convincing. Part of that was encouraging the jury to believe that her story about having a sexual encounter with Donald Trump was actually true, because they wanted the jury to believe that Trump would be afraid that the American people would find her story convincing, and for that reason, that he wouldn't want her story to get out before the 2016 election.
Elvis Presley's home, tourist destination, and major landmark in Memphis is up for sale. A lawsuit filed in September 2023 claims the king's late daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, signed for and failed to pay back a $3.8 million loan using Elvis Presley Enterprises in Graceland as collateral. Nasani Investments alleges Presley took out the loan in May 2018 and had until May 2022 to pay it off, but they claim they haven't been able to get in touch with her since March 2022. Presley died last January. Fast forward to May 2024, this notice of sale posted in the commercial appeal. Lisa Marie's daughter, now owner of Graceland, Riley Keough, and her attorneys firing back in this complaint, saying it's all a fraud. Keough claims her mother, quote, never borrowed money from Nasani Investments and never gave a deed of trust to Nasani Investments, adding the company suing is, quote, not a real entity, and documents allegedly showing Lisa Marie's signature on the loan and deed are forgeries. Adding to that, Keough claims the notary listed on the deed of trust, allegedly notarized in Duval County, Florida, says she never met Presley and didn't notarize any document. Action News 5 reached out to Nasani Investments.
I've been indicted in Georgia. I've appeared on every occasion. I've been sued about 20 to 25 times by a very, very similar movement to this one, which is the let's see what we can do to destroy Donald Trump movement.
Okay, give me just a moment. Okay, sir.
I do consider this indictment a complete embarrassment to the American legal system, but I've shown no tendency not to comply. I show up for every court appearance, and there must have been about 20 to 30 of them. There is no history of my being a flight risk, which is the basis
for possession
sale.
Thank you, sir.
I think it'd be outrageous if you set a bond in this completely political case that comes very, very late.
All right, sir.
It was brought 3 years ago.
Giuliani, I don't want to mute you, but I need to move on. Give me just a moment. I understand what your position is regarding release conditions.
Rudy Giuliani and 10 other Trump allies pleading not guilty to charges of conspiring to overturn the state's 2020 election results.
The former New York mayor was ordered to post $10,000 in bond after evading efforts to serve him with a summons. Let's bring in CNN's Kyung Wah, who's been following this. Kyung, what are you learning this afternoon?
Well, it was quite the arraignment. I haven't actually been inside a felony criminal court like that for an arraignment ever before, and heard quite a lot from one of the defendants. But basically what we began with when it came down for Rudy Giuliani's turn, he was the 11th out of 11 who were scheduled to appear either virtually or in person. He dialed in over the telephone, and the Assistant Attorney General clearly was fed up, saying that it was 3 weeks of back and forth where Giuliani was talking about this on his podcast, appearing on TV shows, even sending out a taunting tweet so that the Attorney General's agents followed him from New York, and then they finally served him notice of this arraignment that was scheduled for today, to where he would finally serve notice. But it happened at his 80th birthday party after he had finished singing New York, New York on his front lawn. When Giuliani was leaving that party, that's when he was served notice. So it was 3 weeks of this sort of a chase. And so what the Attorney General's office has requested is that he appear in person within the next 30 days and that he has to pay a secured bond of $10,000. The lawyer for the prosecution did explain exactly what their philosophy was behind this request. Take a listen.
Rudy Giuliani has made numerous statements over the past month discussing the indictment, his co-defendants, and quite frankly mocking the justice system in Arizona. Given his latest Twitter post and then his lie about communicating with our office, we decided it would be appropriate to ask for some kind of release conditions to ensure his appearance in Arizona.
So in court, Giuliani denied that he was ducking the authorities. He said to the judge that, look, this is a completely political case. Let's see what we can do to destroy Donald Trump, is how he characterized the charges against him. He went on and on for so long, even talking about the Iranian government at one point, that the judge said, I don't want to mute you, but we have to move on. He did plead not guilty. Boris, right. Jessica?
Kyung Law with the latest out of Phoenix. Quite a story there today. All right, thanks so much.
Singapore Airlines says one person died after a flight hit severe turbulence. The plane was headed from London to Singapore before altitude dropped suddenly. It eventually made an emergency landing in Bangkok. According to our partners at the BBC, officials in Indonesia said the man who died probably had a heart attack. The airline says at least 30 other people were injured. I want to bring in CBS News transportation safety analyst Robert Sumwalt. Robert is also the former chair of the National Transportation Safety Board. Robert, great to welcome you. So what are the first things that the investigators are looking at?
Well, good afternoon, Maria. The investigators will certainly want to interview the flight crew, the pilots. They'll have the flight data recorder that they can pull and analyze data from that. So those are two really good things that will help them to figure out exactly what happened here.
So I've been in flights where you hear the pilots, I guess, say something like, we're about to hit turbulence, buckle up your seats. I'm curious, first of all, how they know that turbulence is coming, just to understand. And what are the preparations that generally have to take place? And in this case, do you think that they had that kind of heads up?
Well, I was an airline pilot for 24 years, and I certainly know this routine pretty well. You know from pilot reports that other pilots will be reporting turbulence in the area, so that's one heads up. Sometimes the aircraft controller will hear those pilot reports from other airplanes and relay them to you. But also, you know that when you're going around an area of thunderstorms, you're always going to have the potential for turbulence when you're close to thunderstorms.
And I'm thinking also about the trajectory of this flight. London to Singapore, it's a 13-hour flight. How does a crew typically respond when people are hurt, especially in a flight like that, and if there's still the threat of turbulence happening?
Well, I certainly don't want to blame the victims. We don't know exactly what happened here, but I'll be on an airplane tomorrow. I'll be on one the day after that, the day after that, and I was on one yesterday. The best thing that passengers can do is keep your seatbelts fastened securely while you're seated. As far as the flight crew's action, when something like this happens and they have severe injuries, they're going to want to divert to the nearest suitable airport, the airport that has the greatest ability to care for those injuries.
Robert, thank you so much. And everybody, buckle up.
Just moments ago, Vice President Kamala Harris went after former President Trump for sharing a video that referenced creating a unified Reich in his second term. That post has since been deleted. She made those remarks while delivering a keynote address in Philadelphia before a major group of union workers who are helping get out the vote for November. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House for us. What did the vice president have to say, Gabe?
Afternoon. Well, this is the vice president's fourth visit to Pennsylvania so far this year, her 14th since taking office. But while she was addressing union workers there, as you mentioned, she slammed that social media post from the former president. Now, the Trump campaign has been saying that it was an accidental post, that it was a staffer that shared it without looking at those words. But the vice president took the campaign to task. Take a listen.
Just yesterday, the former president of the United States, who praises dictators, who said there were very fine people on both sides in Charlottesville, let's not forget, took to social media and highlighted language from Nazi Germany. Highlighted language from Nazi Germany. This kind of rhetoric is unsurprising coming from the former president, and it is appalling. And we got to tell him who we are.
Now, her comments come after we have been hearing from campaign officials and also officials here at the White House calling that type of language abhorrent. And this comes as the Biden campaign is really trying to court voters in battleground Pennsylvania, speaking in front of those union workers who have pledged a voter drive, some $200 million union-wide. And this is the SEIU, a union that just elected its first black president, Vice President Harris, there to try and court those voters. And as you see, that union represents roughly 2 million healthcare, public sector, and property service workers. It's a massive union. And this comes as the Biden campaign really tries to focus on topics such as reproductive rights and also student loan debt. Two topics that the vice president had talked about in Philadelphia before. But as you just saw, now with that social media post yesterday, we have been hearing the Biden campaign trying to seize on that. And we expect the President Biden himself, according to his press secretary, to address that social media post more directly later today, Chris.